First, Gary McKinnon is said to be suicidal this evening after losing his fight in the UK courts not to be extradited to face trial in the United States.
The 43-year-old from North London hacked into NASA and US military computers in 2001. He was told today that his attempt to avoid extradition will not be heard in the newly formed Supreme Court.
It is the latest blow for his very public battle to be tried in this country. He suffers from Asperger's syndrome and claims he won't get a fair trial in America.
Today, Gary wasn't well enough to be in court to hear the news, but his mother spoke of her devastation at the decision. Marcus Powell reports.
Are you just going to wait till Gary commits suicide and apologise for his?
A mother despairs for her son as she leaves London's High Court, knowing that he now faces up to 70 years in an American prison.
He's broken, he's suicidal, he's broken. It's ruined Gary's life, it's ruined our lives. And this extradition treaty is a betrayal of British citizens.
Judges here throughout Gary McKinnon's latest attempt to avoid extradition to the States after hacking into the Pentagon's computers. McKinnon, who suffers from Asperger's, a form of autism, wasn't fit to attend the court. Although the judges accepted extradition may have consequences for his health, they decided there were no points of law of public importance which would allow him to appeal to our newly formed Supreme Court, a decision quickly condemned.
He is a highly vulnerable man in a very fragile state, and this is a huge blow to him and his family. The judgment of the High Court stated that the impressive medical evidence presented on his behalf gave the judges no doubt that he will find extradition very difficult, that his mental health will suffer, and that there are risks of his suicide. Why is our government so inhumane to allow this to happen to someone, particularly someone with Asperger's, a form of autism? This is the wholesale destruction and bullying of a small individual by the United States and now our own government.
McKinnon describes himself as a computer nerd who wanted to find out if UFOs exist. He bypassed all American security systems using basic passwords and even left his email address. The US, though, say it was the biggest military hack of all time, causing all 2,000 computers in Washington to be shut down. And they say it caused $700,000 worth of damage. McKinnon said he did no damage. Issues, though, we didn't deem serious enough to prosecute, and offences which occurred before any extradition treaty was signed.
I was amazed at not even the level of security. I mean, there was no security. In their indictments, they say I left the networks open to further attack, but the networks were completely open to attack, and I never had to break into them. It was like logging on.
Now a disabled computer geek who believes in flying saucers may have to spend the rest of his life in an American jail. But his lawyers promise to keep on fighting and take his case back to the European Court of Human Rights. Marcus Powell, London Tonight.
Well, London Tonight has been following Gary's case from the beginning. In fact, it was after our interview with him on the programme last year that a doctor recognised the symptoms of Asperger's and he was diagnosed.
Over the last 8 years, he's tried every legal avenue available to try and avoid extradition, as Damien Stewart reports.
No one can say that the campaign to free McKinnon from the clutches of the law hasn't had some high-profile support, from London Mayor Boris Johnson, Trudy Styler to Sarah Brown and a whole host of others. Rock stars, including Chrissie Hynde, even recorded a song in his support.
So your brother's bound and gagged.
But his fiercest and certainly his most effective champion has been his mother, Janice Sharp. Today has not been a good day for her either. IT worker McKinnon started hacking into American government computers in 2001. A year later, he was charged with what was alleged to be the biggest military hack of all time, and Washington filed a request for his extradition. Meanwhile, the British authorities decided not to prosecute him. In 2007, McKinnon lost his first High Court appeal against extradition. A year later, he lost an appeal to the House of Lords and to the European Court of Human Rights. It was in the same year, after appearing on London Tonight, that McKinnon was diagnosed with Asperger's. In July, the High Court rejected his appeal for a judicial review. And today, the 9th of October, the same court refused McKinnon the chance to take his case to the Supreme Court, the highest in the land. Now the European Court of Human Rights has just 14 days to decide whether they'll hear his final appeal. If not, time's up.
So as Damien's just said there, if that European court route fails, Gary will be extradited. But once he's there, what can he expect?
Well, we're joined now by someone who knows about American law, American lawyer Corey Crider, who works for Reprieve, the organisation which works to protect human rights of prisoners around the world. Corey, thank you for coming in. If we can ask you to take your campaigning hat off for a moment and perhaps just talk us through what Gary can expect if, or as more likely when, he gets to America.
Well, as a federal terrorism defendant in the United States, it's pretty unlikely that Gary would be released on bail. So that means that he's going to be banged up in a federal facility while he awaits to be tried for federal terrorism offenses. So he could be in, fairly serious federal detention from the moment that he hits sort of the tarmac until his trial, which could be, again, several months later.
If at the end of that road he is found guilty, what sort of punishment could he affect? What sort of prison, for example, could he end up in?
If, as I understand, the feds have threatened to throw the book at him, if they do that, it's fairly serious indeed. The federal sentencing guidelines set out a penalty of as much as 50 to 60 years for terrorism offenses. And when you think about the kind of prisons that terrorism defendants usually go to in the U.S., a supermax facility like Florence, it's not a nice place. Think bright lights, stark walls, virtually no contact with the outside world. Not the sort of place you want to be putting a mentally ill person in.
Well, clearly the big fear is, for Gary's family, that he has Asperger's syndrome. Would they take that into account at all?
It might get a slight reduction in his sentence in a federal terrorism trial, but not the kind of mercy that you would expect it to have. I think that we're seriously looking at a very long term of years if he's extradited.
All right, Corey Crider from Reprieve, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.